Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of our hearts, be found acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. How to be better, not bitter. And Joseph said unto his brothers, Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. To read the story of Joseph is to read a story of one who forgave much. Some might say that Joseph had every reason to keep far from his brothers, to be resentful and bitter. Their actions caused Joseph much pain and hurt. According to the story in Genesis, the hatred that these brothers had for Joseph stretched back to when he was a teenager, 17. The seeds of hatred were sown when Joseph brought to his father a bad report about his brothers. And those seeds germinated when the father made Joseph a coat of many colors, signifying his special love for this son. What made matters worse is that Joseph began to have dreams of one day being this great ruler to whom his brothers would bow down. Instead of keeping his dreams to himself, he told his brothers. And the story says they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. They even became jealous of him. The book of Genesis says, in other words, their feelings towards Joseph hardened to such a degree that at one point they conspired to kill him. This story contains all the intrigue of how relationships sour and individuals become increasingly hateful, bitter, resentful, and even destructive. They said to one another, Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we shall say that a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. Genesis 37, 19 and 20. Thankfully, there was one brother, Reuben, who had some goodwill, who didn't join in this plot, but came up with a plan to rescue Joseph from the evil intentions of the other brothers. While the brothers did not carry through with their plan to kill Joseph, they ended up selling him to some Midianite traders for 20 pieces of silver. And those traders took him to Egypt and resold him. A series of negative experiences followed that piled more pain and hurt onto what Joseph had already experienced. There were the years of separation from his beloved father, whom his brothers had deceived into believing that Joseph was dead, devoured by some wild animal. And the grief this caused the old man Jacob. Joseph was falsely accused of trying to seduce the wife of Potiphar, a high official in Egypt who had bought Joseph from the Midianite traders and made him overseer in his house and over all he had. Joseph was imprisoned. We can add to this that Joseph was forgotten by someone who promised to speak favorably to him before the king after Joseph, the prisoner, correctly interpreted a dream that individual had. And my question today is this, my friends: how did Joseph prevent himself from becoming intensely bitter and resentful when he had been through all of these experiences? How could he, who had suffered so much, forgive so much? Instead of growing bitter, it seems as though Joseph became a better person. And I would like you to see with me what Joseph says here as a formula for becoming better instead of bitter. First of all, Joseph told them he was their brother. In the text for today, Joseph says to his brothers, "I am your brother, the one you sold into Egypt." He was their brother before they sold him into Egypt. He was their brother all the years of separation and imprisonment. He was still their brother now. I am your brother. So in answer to the question, how to be better, not bitter, remember what Joseph said to those who hated him, to those who tried to harm and hurt him, as his brothers did. I am your brother, the one you sold into Egypt. In these words, my friends, we see two things. First of all, we see that Joseph had a reason why he might be angry with his brothers and remain alienated from them. They sold him into Egypt, and all that resulted because of that action. He had reason to be angry, to be upset with them. Joseph didn't gloss over what they did. It was terrible. But we also hear something else from Joseph. A reason why he wanted them to come near to him, in spite of how they treated him. I am your brother. My dear friends, when we remember that we are all God's children, that we are all brothers and sisters, when we remember that fact, that should give us reason to be better, not bitter, loving and forgiving, caring and compassionate, even when we are hurt. Because the God who is our Father is loving and forgiving. And that is an attribute that God gives to us. So the next time you feel like being angry with someone, think of who that person is and who you are in relation to that person. I am your spouse. I am your fellow church member. I am your co-worker. I am your fellow citizen. I am your brother. I am your sister. We are all God's children, and we are meant to get along. Joseph realized it is a choice to be better or bitter. To be angry and upset, or not to be angry and upset. Listen to the words of someone to his brothers who at some point wanted to destroy him. Joseph says to those brothers, "Be not grieved or distressed, nor angry or upset with yourselves for selling me here." In other words, my friends, what Joseph realized is that the way we feel, the emotions we express, the way we act, depends on us. We have a choice. We can decide how to respond. Undoubtedly, when Joseph revealed himself to his brothers, a wave of shame and guilt must have swept over them as they remembered what they had done to him, or as he reminded them that they had sold him into Egypt. But as it is for the one who is hurt to choose the way of forgiveness or anger, so it is for those who hurt others. They too can choose. We all have a choice. And friends, whatever else others might do to you, whatever else others might try to take from you, so long as you live, they cannot take away your power to choose. And no matter what they took from Joseph, they couldn't take away that power of choice. And we need to understand that that is perhaps the greatest power we have, the freedom to choose. So even when Joseph was a prisoner in Egypt, he was free to choose how he would respond to his situation. And he chose in such a way that the Bible tells us the Lord was with him and gave him success in whatever he did. So often we give up our ability and our choice, our power to choose. That is the greatest power you have. When someone hurts you, when someone does something terrible to you, the power is with you to decide how you will respond. Dearly beloved, we always have a choice. The choice to keep drinking the bitter poison of anger and resentment, hoping that it will kill those who have hurt us. And I borrowed that from someone who was speaking on the television last week following the tragic accident involving the coach of the Syracuse University basketball team. That woman lost her son in a similar way some years ago. And she spoke about how she was able to forgive the driver who was involved in that accident that led to the death of her son. So we can choose whether we're going to continue to drink that bitter poison of anger and resentment, or whether we will take another remedy that can heal and make better our relationships and make us better in the long run. So I close today by saying Joseph believed that God had a plan that was bigger than any plot or conspiracy that his brothers had in mind. For God did send me before you to preserve life, is what Joseph says to his brothers. God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth and to save your lives. Paul Boos says, forgive